So the first step is to be aware of, oh, that's my thinking, because our first inclination is to go after our eyes and think it's something outside of us. That's called outside in versus inside out. Outside in means that my experience is based on my outside, but it's not true.
Welcome to the Turning Point Podcast, where business growth meets personal development. We know as leaders and business owners, you're juggling a lot, and we've spent decades creating the best systems, tools, and shifts that bring you unimaginable success in your business and tremendous satisfaction in your personal life. That's just how we thrive around here. And now, here's your host, Jon Goldman, here to guide you to your own turning point. Let's get started.
Hi, welcome back. My name is Jon Goldman, and I'm here with Tsippi, who's our co-host, and we're happy to have Lily Sais, like rice, with us. And we're both part of the 3P community. We once met and hit it off, and I thought we would go over some of the insights that we share and that Lily uses so powerfully in the world. And Lily, we have some questions for you, so I'm really excited to get started and appreciate you being on the show today.
Me too. I'm so excited. Thank you for having me.
Okay, my pleasure. Tsippi.
All right. So it's so exciting to have both of you because I know that this is a topic that has been so helpful in both of the work that you do. So let's just do a quick introduction and we'll actually do it for both of you. So Lily, you're a transformational coach and certified three principles practitioner. You specialize in helping individuals overcome anxiety, panic, and OCD. And you have an extensive background as a school psychologist. You've experienced severe anxiety firsthand for many years. And from what I've understood from you, in 2018, you discovered the three principles which led to your own transformation and lasting peace. Now, through your own coaching practice, Peace from Within, you guide others to mental well-being using this powerful framework. You also share your insights as an influencer in the mental health space, helping a wider audience naturally find peace and happiness. Tell us a little bit about how you came to the three P's. What is it? What does it mean to you? What does it do for you?
Well, actually, I was introduced to the Three Principles Understanding by Sari Taylor, and that's where John and I met at her presentation, actually, at the 3P UK conference. And for me, I had tried, and not just tried, I would dedicate, months and years to really wanting to have less anxiety and panic attacks, get over panic attacks, and nothing was deep and long lasting. And so after another time of more panic attacks and driving anxiety, I put into, Google like anxiety panic and up pops Sari Taylor. And it was like a 5 or 7 day course where she just sent you one 30-minute video. And that was where I started to learn about the three principles understanding. And was sorry, I'd never heard anybody experience anxiety to the severe level that I did. So she already caught my attention there. And then what she was sharing was so simple and transformational that it just changed my life. And I had never heard anybody talk about that throughout grad school or any of my training. I'd been at that time a school psychologist for about 7 or 8 years. And the simplicity of it. And so I thought, I was like, why doesn't everybody know this? Why isn't this being taught? Why isn't this being shared more often? At least like I hadn't come into that until then. So that was my introduction in 2018. And it just changed my life.
Wow. So we're going to dive into what those three P's are. John, I want to hear your story. So, although you are the host of the show, we have so many new listeners each week. So, I'll give a quick introduction. So, John, as a business mentor and leadership expert with a strong background in entrepreneurship and executive coaching, you have decades of experience helping leaders and organizations achieve sustainable growth and navigate complex changes. You've founded multiple successful ventures and authored several books, combining practical business strategies with a deep understanding of human psychology to guide leaders through transformative moments. Your holistic approach, which focuses on aligning values with strategic actions, has made you a trusted advisor and for top executives and a respected voice in the business community. John, tell us what has the three P's done for you? How did you come about to find this new methodology?
I think you left off good looking and humble.
Obviously, that was like just what everybody knew already.
Okay, so I have a friend. His name is Niven, And Arya Niven, he and I were once speaking, and he said, you ought to check out this thing called 3P. And I'm like, okay. So I called um, Keith and Valda in Lacana, Washington, who are extraordinarily expert facilitators of this concept. And I asked him how much it cost and how long it was. And he said that it's going to be 4 or 5 days. You have to fly out here to Lacana, Washington. And I said, that's fine. I'm happy to pay the amount. It was thousands and thousands of dollars. And like, wow, but okay. But I'm not willing to spend that much time. I could do it. I'll do it in 2 days. And he said, no, you have to come the full time or else it's not going to work. It's kind of like if you take medication, but you don't take the full dose. Like, look, this is what I do for a living. I'm really fast. I get it. I really trust me. I don't have the time. So I'm happy to pay the money, but I'm just not going to go for that long. And he said, okay, so forget it. What? So my wife and I flew out there and we spent almost a week out there. And it had a hugely transformational impact on my life. And sure enough, it wasn't until the second or third day that the penny dropped. It's like, oh, I think I'm starting to get it. And my journey has taken me to study Eastern religion and Western religion and every ism and hedonism and Buddhism and feminism and universalism and Hinduism and Judaism and Islam and Christianity. And I've studied multiple disciplines. And I was looking for something that ties it together. And I found that this insight, it's kind of like one insight, lots of different manifestations of it. And so I've constantly used it as part of our practice. And I think it's a really helpful understanding. So that's how I ultimately ended up with it and have been in and out of the community, so to speak, for years and have people on our team that are 3P practitioners. And so that's what got me into it. And I think
Wow.
the reason why we wanted you on here, Lily, is because the idea of understanding our thinking is incredibly powerful and produces results. Not just that it's nice, but it actually creates change in people's lives. And so it's a fundamental. So that's why I think that we asked you to come on the show today.
Wow. And so let's get a little bit deeper into what the 3Ps are. I actually am new to this concept. So I texted Lily. I was like, so tell me about the 3Cs. And she's like, she was so polite about it. Thank you, Lily. But you've gone through so much yourself with your anxiety journey and you're so open about it. What did you try before this? And tell us more about what the 3Ps actually are and how they helped you.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of what I participated in and tried, and then also practiced as a school psychologist. Like I'm trying to, it's like, I don't want to poo-poo on them is what I'm saying. Like there's so many ways that people can, I think, find a quiet mind and a good feeling. But for me, some of the things were meditation and mindfulness. And all of those have really great merits. But I would do them. Okay, well, how do I want to say it? What was missing was the understanding of the principles. And so that for me, when I was trained in Vedic meditation, and then I thought more I needed to meditate, like more. And so I became certified to teach meditation and mindfulness in schools as a school psychologist, because I could think, well, if I'm mindful all the time, like I won't be as anxious. But what's missing was like this foundational understanding. Same with, and so then mindfulness and grounding techniques and breathing, all of these things that are recommended for anxiety, like a grounding technique might be to look and find 5 things that are green, or rub your legs and press your feet, but without really understanding my innate well-being, or that thoughts flow all on their own, or some of the 3 principles. I was really just resisting my experience. I didn't understand it. I was really afraid that how anxious I was, that I could lose my mind. Like I thought, which is really common, that I was like on the verge of insanity. And so not having like a solid understanding of how we work as human beings, and that like I'm not broken and our mind actually has a self-correcting system and there was less for me to do. Everything that I was doing like didn't land or make a difference because I was so like I kept thinking, and then checking on myself and thinking kind of my experience was more special in a not good way. So I also did a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy, which I think can be really interesting. But then I thought more about my thoughts and like trying to dissect my thoughts. And so for me, a lot of I think what other people found relief in, breathing, grounding, cognitive behavioral therapy, I had more thinking about it and more focus on myself, and would very innocently then get a bit obsessed about it. Like breathing, I would do, a lot of people are like, do we do square breathing and 4-7-8 breathing? But I would become so focused that I literally for months couldn't stop thinking about my breathing and I couldn't breathe effortlessly. And and so let me try to even think. And then even like meditation or having a great morning practice, or a lot of people talk about the importance of sleep, but I would just do it like times 100, so then my life got really small, especially with like a focus on healthy eating. And I would just go so deep and like get really obsessive about it. And have a lot of thinking about myself and my anxiety and my panic. And it was so like um, personal. And then when I came into the three principles understanding, that's what was missing. So for me, one of the big insights that I had was that my wisdom and common sense got me through every panic attack. And because I had a panic attack driving on the freeway in Los Angeles. And then for the next 7 years, that really consumed me, like scanning, how am I feeling? What if I have another panic attack? And so for 7 years, I was so afraid of it. And so like, I'd want to go to bed at an early time and not look at the screens. And if I was, I'd wear blue light blocking glasses and I'd get up and I'd meditate for a long time and I'd do gentle yoga. I did yoga therapy. I did neurofeedback. I would use crystals and mantras. And the whole time I was like, am I anxious? And let me catch it early. So when I first had that insight, I saw like I got through every panic attack. So maybe I don't need to spend as much time scanning and preparing. And I also saw, but I saw without judgment, that all of my time thinking and all of my routines was actually probably contributing to like revving up my system. Um, and I saw that. And then another thing that I got curious about, and because I think a lot of times what I love about 3P practitioners is they're not saying you have to believe me. They're just like, hey, try, this is what feels true to me. See if it feels true for you. Um, and so I had heard thoughts flow all on their own. And before I was also doing tapping. I do like emotional freedom technique. I was working really hard. And I also still wasn't feeling great. But so when I heard thoughts flow all on their own, like there's less for me to do. And then kind of paired with that was just because I had a thought didn't mean it was true. And I know those seem simple, but just those I thought, is that really true? And so for me, a lot of it was there was so much tension and energy around driving. And so just with those things, I kind of thought maybe I can just watch TV with my husband rather than avoiding the TV and going to bed early. And maybe I can just keep driving, even if I have a thought like that a panic attack could be starting. And I just genuinely was curious. And so I stopped doing as much. And that included when I would have an anxious thought, it kind of felt like the curtain got pulled back, like the movie The Wizard of Oz, where before I felt like it was this all-knowing thing and I then like have to pull over. And it just suddenly like I might have a thought, oh, you could panic and da 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 da, and here are these symptoms starting. But I thought, well, maybe that's not true, and maybe that's going to flow on its own. And I just started driving with much more ease. And before that, probably a few times a month, I would have a panic attack and be unable to make it to work, and I would have to leave my car. So that was the major thing that got me into the three principles conversation, because I was actually looking into disability because it was so challenging. I had a whole year where I didn't drive on the freeway and I'd ride my bike to work. So really, and the principle of
No, Lily,
mind.
I'm going to stop you there because I
Yes,
want to
stop
just
me.
get Jon to weigh in here. I mean, it sounds like you are the modality queen, and I know that Jon, you are as well, like so versed in all these modalities. And as Lily's speaking, I can hear your voice as well in giving over these principles. I wanted to ask you about Lily's experience. How common is this kind of anxiety? How often do you see this in business leaders? And how do people generally deal with it without having all these modalities at their fingertips?
When people experience what we call SAT, stressful anxious thinking, which I believe is the source of most of the suffering. So one of the things that you said, Lily, is that I kind of was identified with my thoughts. And one of the ideas that really frees people up is I'm the thinker, I'm not the thought. I'm the feeler, I'm not the feeling. And the first thing is like, I'm so enrolled in this thought that it's real. It's as real as this yellow bell is real. And the same thing with the feeling. I personally gave my feelings a lot of weight. And that's where I would always go first. Is like, okay, what's the feeling? And let's get underneath the feeling. I still believe that the feelings are a access way to find out what's really going on. They're markers. So I, like you, Lily, I've been a technique junkie, if you will, and I would call those things upstream and downstream. And the idea that there are some basic principles that are further upstream where the water is pure and more source, and then they start to fracture and split out like tributaries in a river that spread out. So whether it's CBT or DBT or tapping or EFT or cognitive therapy or meditation, and I'm a huge fan of all of them. I meditate still regularly. I breathe regularly. I facilitate breath work. I facilitate meditation. And I can see that they're further downstream. And I'm also a positive psychology, a recovering positive psychology teacher as well. The angle I took was that if something is negative, let's make it positive and let's reframe. And I focused on the reframing. What I'm going to project that there are people listening that will look at you, Lily, and say, what a pathetic lady. Like, too bad you couldn't pull it together. Like, there's really something the matter with you. And that judgment is coming from a place of either insecurity or judgmentalness that is not really self-reflective. And what happens is we're like looking, wow, if you had it together, there's something the matter with you. But the truth is, we're at a state in history where there's more amphetamines, there's more medication, there's more people who are depressed and anxious and sad and OCD and more psychologically medicated people on the planet than has ever been in the history of mankind. And so we're a stressed out, sad world, and some people float in and out of it easier than others. So the reason why we wanted you on, Lily, is because some of these ideas are simple. And one of the things that you said is that I started to explore it, and I can, I have the ability myself. And I think that's one of the beautiful, empowering ideas that I heard you share, is that we have the innate wisdom and we have our innate capability of self-regulation. And that's really helpful for people because you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to like sign up for a certain program and finally be healed. You have it in your way. Now, sometimes there's a lot of stuff in the way. And so once we start to get aware of it. So those are some of my thoughts, Tsippi, in terms of how we get there.
And Jon, so you mentioned that stress and anxiety are so common. Why is that? And how can we help people? How can we overcome this? Or is this part of it?
The stressful, anxious thinking is a result of what Lily was referring to, I believe, as overthinking. and we are addicted to expectations. We have an expectation it should be a certain way, and when it doesn't meet my expectation, I have a gap between of where I am and where I think it should be, and I think there's something the matter, and so I start looking for things to be matter. And if I've got to get my kids out on time, and I've got to get to work on time, and I've got to get breakfast is made, and I have to respond to an email, and you know what that's called? LIFE, life. And life is normal. Life has stress to it. And the only thing that's different about it is our expectations and our thinking around it. It's not the stress. It's not the circumstance, our thinking about it. And I think what you're referring to is our way of acknowledging it. One of the things that you said that I just want to draw a little bit delineation of is that I was thinking a lot. And we want to draw a distinction between thought and thinking. Thought is a construct called thought. Thinking is something that our brain does. And just by being aware that there's thought is very different than thinking, if that makes sense.
Wow. So let's make this practical. And Lily, will bring it back to you right now. And I'll have each of you actually go through a scenario that you commonly see in your practice using the 3Ps so that our audience can understand, like, what do I actually do? How can I implement this?
Let's define them and then apply.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, go ahead. Whichever one of you wants to define them.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, the principle, and the names don't matter because they're just happening. The principles are happening whether we know about them or not. But when people understand them, that's when they can really see their role, and it helps people, how do I want to say it, like, just be more in the flow of life and access their mental well-being. So the principle of mind is, Jon, maybe you can say them shorter. Like sometimes I'm wordier. I wonder if you could be more succinct than I could be.
Give it a shot. Mind, thought, and consciousness are the 3 principles. So mind is a universal aspect that there's thought waves in the air, if you will. Mind, thought is our ability to use our thinking capacity, which is very different than animals. And then consciousness is an awareness that there's an energetic field in the world, otherwise known as God, or otherwise known as universal something or other. And so once we start to get clear that there are operative principles, and the names are not nearly as important as the imperative truth that there's gravity. And if I take my bell and drop it, that's because gravity is at work. So I'm not going to argue like whether gravity is at play or not, because it's a principle. And the fact that we process and we think our experiences, and we're always thinking our feeling, that means that if I am in a low state, if I'm thinking low state, I'm gonna feel low state. If I'm in we could do an experiment right now. So if you drop your head for a moment, both you guys, and then you kind of think like about the problems in the world, and you hold your hand up and you're like, it's like, yes. You can't possibly do it. It doesn't work because we're feeling our thinking. And so there's nobody who's in a good state, in a flowing state, that has such anxious thoughts. Anxious thoughts come from our thinking. And so that's the first overarching principle of thought. And when we have an awareness that there's 3 of us in the room right now, right? So there's Jon, and then I'm having a conversation with you, Lily, that's second person. And then Tsippi, you're maybe a fly on the wall, if you will. So when we become suddenly aware of this conversation, we lift up from it. We're no longer just in this, I'm looking from my own perspective. And that's what most of us do in a conversation. I'm thinking about my thoughts. And then I can jump into Lily's shoes, which is second person, think about her thoughts. And then I can go all the way out. So this takes us more into mind, thought, and consciousness, that there's an energy that connects us all. Does that make sense, Lily? You want to tweak it?
No, it sounded great.
Okay.
Well, for those of us who are flies on the wall and trying to still understand, how is this going to help my life? So,
good.
So,
okay,
yeah,
let's jump into that.
Okay. Yeah.
So well, let's get a scenario. Like, Lily, give me a common scenario, like maybe somebody who's transitioning careers, lost their job, going through some issues as a parent, as an entrepreneur. Like, how can you implement this into your life to actually get results?
Okay, so let's give the example about a job. If you've lost your job, it would be really normal to have a whole bunch of thoughts. And some of those thoughts, so thought in itself is neutral. There's not like good, bad, right, or wrong. But when you can see thoughts and also thinking it's a gift, so if
Let's pause.
somebody
You
loses
gotta
their,
pause. I don't know if you got that, Tsippi. Thought is neutral, right? So I have a really hard time with that. What do you mean thought is neutral? There's good thoughts and there's bad thoughts. So Lily, what do you mean?
well, there's actually not, because okay, if I was a writer and I wrote horror movies, I'd be really excited to have a thought about somebody murdering somebody and all of these, like, which other person might be like, that's a bad thought. No, in that instance, I could be really excited to be flooded with a bunch of gory, like, illegal thoughts. But so in itself, the thought is neutral. It's when we breathe life into it. So that's kind of where it's really just also popping up. What else would you want to say?
Well, I want to comment that I once heard it in terms of the first thought is free. The first thought is free, meaning that we cannot control our thoughts. Thoughts are energy and they're motion, and one is going to come. They're like buses. You miss one, another one's going to come, another one's going to come, and so you can count on that happening for the rest of your life. That you'll always have new thoughts. So now, once a thought comes in, it's like, okay, I try to watch my eyes, and so that means that I'm married. I only want to have my eyes on my wife, and if I see another woman walk in front of me, it's like, oh no, I looked at a woman, and then internally I have a little bell. It's like, all right, I'm just turning away. I'm not going to follow it. The second thought is up to me. That's what we call rumination. So your first thought is free. It comes in. Now, what I do with that thought is where point of choice comes in. All of life is based on point of choice. So once I take that thought and I start running with it, now I'm ruminating on it. Now I'm developing it. Just because one of the greatest insights is that just because a thought comes in doesn't mean it's worthy of your attention. And many of us don't realize that. Asking the simple question is this a helpful thought or not a helpful thought? And is it worthy of me pursuing it? We have all sorts of crazy, stupid thoughts that come in all the time. And just because it's a thought, and just because I'm thinking of, I'm so annoyed, I'm so frustrated, I don't like what you're saying, I don't like this, I don't like that, I'm comparing me, I'm comparing you. Just because it comes up doesn't make it worthy of your valuable space and time.
Yeah. And in that, the loss of a job, somebody could have a thought, I'm never going to find another job. And with the thought, then, we really can feel it. So they might picture themselves, oh my gosh, with this job market, I'm never going to find another job and I'm not going to be able to provide for my family. We're going to lose our mortgage. We're going to lose our home. But when you can start to, one, understand, usually if they were following those thoughts or engaging with them, their mood's going to go down. They're going to start to, feel that, maybe feel hopeless, feel sad, feel anxious, feel tense, like, whatever. They might also have some physical symptoms. And when they have this understanding, that feeling can actually clue them in to the train of thought that they're on. And rather than thinking, oh, because I'm feeling so bad, this must be true. It's probably in my future that I'm not going to have a job for months and my life's going to fall apart. Knowing I'm just feeling my thinking. Just because I'm feeling it strongly doesn't mean it's true. The strong feeling can actually wake them up, kind of clue them in. Oh, wow. My imagination took me on this wild ride. And I don't have to believe that. They can kind of hop off of that train of thought. And when they have this understanding, they can see it. And so they're not going to beat themselves up, because all human beings sometimes get caught up in unhelpful thoughts. And the moment they can notice it, actually noticing without judgment is a lot of what I talk to my clients about. They're not like, what's wrong with me? All humans can get caught up sometimes. So they notice without judgment, but it has a pause and they kind of wake up. Those thoughts can flow away and then new thoughts can come in, because thoughts are always coming and going. So around the corner can be also, like, sometimes I'll then walk out of a busy mind and think, I don't need to like obsessively think of how am I going to get a new job, or I might have that conversation with that client, knowing if your train of thought's not serving you, hop out, let your mind settle. Because I always like to use the snow globe. It's like we're never going to see more clearly by thinking more. So you notice that I'm really shaken up around thoughts about getting a new job. But then they just can set their mind down. And this is how minds are designed to settle. And when they settle, you have so much more clarity and fresh new ideas. And so this is how all human beings work. And then in that state of mind, I don't know, fresh new ideas about jobs, or sometimes you might remember, hey, the last time I looked for a job, I felt worried and anxious too. And then I actually and so that's kind of how I see it, having a conversation if somebody feels a lot of insecure thoughts coming up about losing a job.
So just to follow up with you, so once the person understands that they are anxious because they're thinking about their thoughts are making them anxious about losing their job. So how do they actually let the thoughts settle and come into this other state of mind?
Well, it's actually knowing that thoughts settle all on their own. Just like with the snow globe, when we set something down, that's how we are designed. And so seeing that there's nothing they have to do. It doesn't mean that they have to just sit there in their chair waiting for them to settle, but just knowing, oh, wow, actually, I feel really shaken up about this job. I'm going to kind of walk out a busy mind. And they might just do nothing. They might just continue to do what they're doing. If they're out with their family, they kind of get present again. They're like, I got really swirled up in freaking out. And here I'm at the market with my family, or I'm at a beach day. So I'm just going to be here. But if they're at home, so to me, the biggest thing is understanding that minds settle and that their mind just got shaken up, but they don't need to like think their way out of it. Because oftentimes when people, before having this understanding, they're okay, now I'm going to obsess. I'm going to do a pros and cons list. I'm going to obsessively look online. And they might know not in the great state of mind to do that. And something might occur to them I'm going to go on a walk. And it's not like the walk but it's kind of like they'll walk out of the busy mind and get back into their life. And it's more for me when people start to see that their mind settles and all they're feeling is a cloudy, kind of shaken up, insecure mind. And there's not actually a problem. Like it's not catastrophic happening in real life, just in their mind.
So, Jon, do you have something to add to that before we go over to an example on your side?
Well, we both have snow globes. I made a custom snow globe that we provide for people. And so essentially, if this is our thoughts and seeing that they settle, I don't know how well you can see that. Let's see. There we go. So it says, what's that? And it's got this guy with all sorts of crazy colors coming out of it, his mind. It says, oh, that's just my thinking. So the first step is to be aware of, oh, that's my thinking. Because our first inclination is to go after our eyes and think it's something outside of us. That's called outside in versus inside out. Outside in means that my experience is based on my outside, but it's not true. The three of us can walk through a market and have totally different experiences. Tsippi, you can be coming from saying, wow, that might be an interesting show. And Lily might be going through as a school psychologist and saying, wow, that looks like a pretty dysfunctional relationship. And my background as a businessman might be like, wow, they really ought to open up their store in a way that allow people to come in. So we don't experience the world as it is, but we experience the world as we are. And so therefore, as we run with these thoughts, by becoming aware of it, that means we're no longer that. So if we turn the snow globe over to the other side, so what this says is take a deep breath. I find literally just by taking 2 deep breaths, what that allows us to do is then it says that I'm the thinker, not the thought. I'm the feeler, not the feeling. And that is a huge thing, because if I'm all caught up like this, when you can't take a breath, you're like a slave and you're caught up in that. So when we slow it down just a little bit, it settles. And from that settled place, then our own innate wisdom and our own innate capabilities and well-being can kick in, which is what's exciting about it, because we actually have an inherent belief that we're not bad, but we're good. And so when a person loses their job, it's not the fact that they lose their job. People lose their jobs all the time, and it could be the greatest blessing. Two people can have the exact same external experience and have an internal experience that's totally different. Two people are whitewater rafting. You have Jose and Eduardo. They're both whitewater rafting guides. And then you have Julie and Susie that are both riding. So Julie and Susie, Julie is stressed out about this trip. Oh my God, I'm so scared. This is terrifying. Look how fast the water is going. What if I fall? Is this safe? How many people died on the Colorado River? Susie, on the other hand, is like, woo, we're in for a ride. They're both sitting there. And when Susie falls in, what happens? She's like, oh my God. But they told them right before, if you fall in, knees to your nose and hold up your hands. I don't know if you guys ever been whitewater rafting, but if you fall in, so the water's swirling, and that's our life. Because life is like whitewater rafting. So sometimes you're going backwards, sometimes you're going forward, sometimes you can control it, sometimes you can't. So both of them fall. First time Julie falls in, the one she's all stressed out. She falls in and she doesn't remember anything because she's not in this moment. All she's doing is she's got stressful, anxious thinking about it. She's like, oh my God. So when you do this and you start spreading out, her body is vertical. Now she's smashed up against the rock. The boat comes and pushes up against her. And she's like, because she's thrashing, because she's so stressful in her anxious thinking and worried, enrolled in that. So she's having a really hard time. They have to like fight with her to bring her in. And so then her experience is a manifestation of her thinking. Now let's contrast that to Julie. Julie falls in, they're having a good time, like, whoa, she falls all the way out. She falls in, she remembers, oh yeah, knees to my nose, hands up, knees to my nose. They pull up like, whoa, that's amazing. Thank you. Exact same physical experience, two totally different ways of dealing with it. So when someone loses a job, they can either be like, oh my gosh, this is so great. First of all, I got some time now to think. And what can I do now? What is my next best step? Because they're not living in some future state of like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. They can allow their own innate trust, their own innate well-being, their own innate systems to actually guide them when the next step is. And what people do, instead of being aware and thinking in this moment, they're doing what we call three corners. So if you are at three corners, let's say these are the three corners. So if you're right here, you go down one corner and then a second corner and a third corner. That's into the future. We don't have to do that. Our thinking is not necessary. There's no such thing as thought in the future or thought in the past. That's only projecting to the future or ruminating and thinking about the past. So if we're right here, all we need to do is like, okay, yeah, you can think about what it's going to do, but you'll never have what's called thought in the moment. Thought in the moment is the three principles concept that all my creativity is always and only in this moment. You cannot by nature have thoughts and creativity in the future because you're not there, and you can't have it in the past. So this reduces a ton of the anxiety. Instead of having to throw around three corners, like, oh, let me deal with my next best step in this moment and be aware of my thoughts in this moment. And in doing so, then your own innate creativity and experience can flow out.
So I want to follow up and ask something that's relevant to your demographic, Jon, and we'll ask Lily to weigh in on it as well, which is that what you're speaking about sounds like, you referenced positive psychology and how you're recovering from it. And I kind of feel like with this approach, isn't it the same? Because let's take somebody who's like 75 and would like to leave his business after many, many, many years. And the next line of leadership is just not there. They can't step up. They can't. He's got nobody else to do it. So he's kind of stuck there, or he's handing it over to somebody who's going to drive the business into the ground. Or let's take a successful business woman, and she found out her husband isn't faithful, and now she's decided, she's on her own. So is she just going to think, are they just to think positive thoughts, or to think like, well, it's just that I'm stressed about this, so the situation isn't really all that bad, it's just that it's my thinking about it, or how are they actually going to maneuver through and get to the next step by just understanding that it's their anxious thoughts? Like, they actually have serious problems.
Right. So first of all, they have challenges. And the language of problem versus challenge is important. Second of all, is that we have a very strong underlying process that we call ABC, accept, bounce, and choose. And so accept is acknowledge and accept what's going on right now. Right now, I would like to leave the business, and this is my judgment, my assessment of my next chapter. And I don't know if I don't know if it's going to be bad or if they're going to be good. And right now, my assessment is that they're not very good. That's accepting what is, as opposed to not accepting what is. And the next thing is to be, accept, balance, and choose. Let me make a decision. What can I do? Let me use this situation as a growth opportunity to learn or to grow or to live, because this is where my life is right now. And I'm no longer a victim. I'm a chooser. And so that brings me to C. That means I'm always, always in a place of choice. There's something in Hebrew called a nekuda bechira, a point of free choice. And all of life is always about choosing. That's, one of the books I'd like to write someday is called The Choosers. Because if you can choose, it doesn't matter where you are, because you're always choosing your next best step. And if there's two people, one person was brought up with an excellent education and he's got good character traits and he had a loving family, and he comes in at night and he closes the door, wakes up his wife, shuffles across the room, goes into the bathroom and turns the light on, wakes her up. He's not nearly as powerful in his choice as the alcoholic who sees a cat walking across the street with a bottle in his hand, takes a swig, and decides, I'm not going to kick the cat. He's such a low level of consciousness that he thinks it's fun to drink and kick cats. The fact that he chose not to, he at that moment made a greater choice than this great guy who's got everything going for him, because he wasn't aware of his thinking in the moment. So that means if we're always in a place of A, B, C, accept, bounce, and choose, we can always choose our next step. And it's never, you're never, ever, ever stuck. I just heard from one of our, we have mentor meetings every week, and we review all our clients. And one of our mentors said that one of the greatest gifts that just happened for one of our clients was that they finally got the fact that they're never, ever, ever stuck. And the way that she viewed life was that she was, always stuck in between a rock and a hard place. And that this guy who is 76 years old, wants to get out of the business, his current people doesn't have it. Okay, he's not stuck. What can he do? I don't know. I'm not in his position, but I know that he can certainly look at the people. Either he can coach them in or coach them out. Maybe it's a great opportunity to find another partner. Maybe he can take his dial and there's 3 points on a dial. Either you're going to own the company, you have a partner, or you work for somebody else. And maybe he's going to turn it and he's going to have a partnership with someone else. Or maybe he's going to, go to work for the company instead of owning the company. And maybe he's going to find, this is a great opportunity for me to actually recruit someone. He's never stuck. And so that leaves you with being able to accept and acknowledge my thinking about it, accept the situation, use this as an opportunity to bounce, and then choose my next best step. And in our system, we have about 10 different choice tools so that you can always choose.
Lily, what could you add to that?
Well, I think that, in kind of the people that I would work with, they start to kind of understand that their state of mind plays a role. And so, in those scenarios where something can look like a real challenge, often we'll talk about like levels of consciousness. And so sometimes if you're in the basement, it's super dark, it's like there's no windows because you're in the basement. And so there's no good ideas there. So when people start to know, oh, I'm in a really low state of mind, that's not when they have access to wisdom and creativity and perspective, but they also see that's not a problem. But in this state of mind, why would I keep thinking about, let's say the woman whose husband was unfaithful? It's so normal, like to be in a really low state of mind. So when they can understand that, they can see that that's like, it's like looking at it with dark colored glasses. But with consciousness, you can be in the basement, but consciousness rises. That's why, if it's midnight or 3 a.m., you often are worried and then you go to sleep. They say sleep on it. And naturally, your consciousness rises. So when you wake up in the morning, it's kind of like you're on a rooftop where you've got such a bigger perspective. And sometimes, actually, it doesn't look like a problem. Like it might look like even an opportunity where, well, okay, like and nothing about the situation changed, but what changed was your state of mind. And so when people start to get onto this, they're less likely to spend as much time trying to solve it in the basement. They might just be like, okay. And actually, once you kind of accept, well, I'm in a really low state of mind because whatever, let's like, I just found out my husband's unfaithful. Like they're not thinking, oh, I got to pop up to the roof or think positively. No, just accepting it, but leaving your mind be, knowing um, this is what it is. And then their consciousness rises. And so they stop like wasting time or beating themselves up or like digging it deeper by trying to think their way out of it. Or even they just know, I'm not going to talk to anybody about it right now, because sometimes they do. And then they see it. And then they get their own lived experience with this, because so many of my clients, they get excited when they start to say, oh, I was in a low mood. So I knew I was going to be really just like dark colored glasses about me as a mom, me as a wife, me with my friends, me as my future. So they might have all those thoughts, but they're not taking them as seriously. So the thoughts are free to come and go. And then when they're in a different state of mind, they're going to have much better ideas. And also, they're going to be in a place to actually execute those ideas. Because what happens is, even if people have a good idea when they're lower, it's like kind of slogging through mud, where it's like, oh, I don't want to call that lawyer and I don't want to talk to that friend. But when they're here, they're there. So that to me, it's all really understanding the state of mind. And one thing that I also love about the three principles, community and conversation, is this is universal to all human beings. So what I've seen, what made a big difference for me and for people is they stop taking it so personally, because they start to see one, that like everybody loses their job and, even the life stuff, but also, oh, we can all be at a low state of mind, everybody. Because when people think and they take it so personally, they're like, why me? Why does this happen to me? And this probably doesn't happen to any. And rather than like, that changed my life and so many of my clients, because we get onto ourselves and we're like, oh, all human beings can go down. And when we're down there, for everybody, we're looking at life in the basement. It's not personal to me. Life isn't. And then it really just helps us kind of bounce back, because that's how our consciousness, our state of mind is. It's like a beach ball, and when you start to see that, yeah, you're ruminating or you're just doing it, you let it go and it really bounces back. Sometimes that day, and sometimes it's just the next day. But in that more yucky state of mind, you're less likely to dig it deeper by trying to solve it or taking it personally and thinking, what did I do wrong?
Wow,
Lily,
this
when
is
you
great.
said that it's like an elevator, so what I find is that one of the things that Sydney Banks, who is the person who had this insight of the three principles, is that he would get upset sometimes, but he wouldn't have anything on it. So this is a really important line that, I might be upset, but I don't have anything on it. Like, okay, I got upset and like, okay, I move on. And realizing that when you're in the basement here, I oftentimes find myself in the basement at the end of the evening. I work I work in late afternoon, sometimes in the evenings, because of where I live. And my willpower muscle is shot. The world looks kind of dark. I'm tired of solving problems. And so at that moment, I'm down here and I say to my wife, like, you know what? Anything I say right now, it's just going to be from a basement. And I wake up in the morning, and sure enough, the next morning, I'm in a very different space. Or if I can't necessarily do that, I don't take it so seriously. And we all have relationships where people say really stupid, hurtful things. And it doesn't mean it's not necessarily the truth. And I can let go of it. Doesn't mean that it's the truth. And I don't need to keep ruminating on it. And so the powerful thing here is that we can always just become aware of it. And I think the power of what I'm hearing you say, Lily, is that by becoming aware of our thinking and becoming aware of our state, then our own innate wisdom and health will kick back in. And it's a natural self-correcting system. And most people don't get that and don't have the patience for that and aren't willing to do that. They're trained to gap spot. Let me find a problem and let me offer a solution. And so they start looking at the world as a bunch of problems and solutions. and they overthink the solution, and it's like, okay, let me try to make that happen. To allow the unfolding of your own creativity and unfolding the solution, it's a little counterintuitive, but it works.
Wow. So we're getting to the bottom of the hour, and I would like to ask both of you for your final piece of advice and wisdom before we ask Lily to share where people could find her, and Jon will do the same. But first, we have a very exciting announcement. If you ever feel like you're stuck in a cycle of stress or reactive thinking, it is time to hit pause and ask yourself, wait, what if the key to success isn't doing more, but it's about thinking differently? And that's exactly what we've been talking about today. After decades of working with top executives and entrepreneurs, Jon Goldman has isolated the one thing that has been holding you back: your thinking. He's packed all of that knowledge into the greatest comic book that is called Wait, What Am I Thinking? Why Am I Talking? This book is full of tips that can transform your life and your business. You need this on your coffee table and at work because it's fun, it opens real conversations, and it works. So you can now get your free copy at book.myturningpoint.com and watch your business thrive, your relationships transform, and your happiness skyrocket. That's book.myturningpoint.com. So now, Lily, let's go over to you and end with your one final thought, your one piece of advice based on the 3Ps or everything that you're doing in your practice. What do you want people to know today?
If you don't feel good, mentally, you're feeling down in the dumps or bummed out or anxious or stressed, don't believe what you're thinking. That would be my biggest thing. That's not the time to think your thoughts are true. And so that was huge, like using your feelings as guidance. If I don't feel good, not going to believe my thinking unless it wishes me well. Whether it's business, relationships, health or anything, don't feel good, don't pay attention to your thinking unless it wishes you well.
And Lily, where can we find out more about you? What do you do? How can we work with you? Where is all that located?
Yes. Well, I love being on social media, so that's a great place to find me. On TikTok, I'm just at Peace from Within, and then all my links are there, and there's various links. Like on Instagram, it's _ Peace from Within. And I have one of the best places to work with me. I have a monthly membership called the Peace from Within Community, and that's for people all over the world. And I have a bunch of courses and an extensive video library on probably every topic that relates to anxiety. And then once to twice a week, I do live group coaching. And so I always have a Tuesday at the same time, and then I vary it because there's people from all over the world. And it's great because it's really a community. And I've been working as a coach for 4 years, but I've had this community since October. And so now there are people that they'll, in the chat say, can I weigh in on this? And so it's a true community. Yesterday we had it, and people that have like overcome things, they're the ones actually giving advice now. So it's just like, it's more than I ever expected. So that's a really great place and it's very affordable in that way.
That's amazing. So we'll definitely link it to the show notes. And thank you so much. And Jon, what is your final piece of advice for all of our listeners? And also, how can people find out more about our concierge coaching?
And as you mentioned, the access point is about our new book, Wait, WAIT, which is What Am I Thinking? Why Am I Talking? And from there, you'll be able to download a free copy of it right now while it's free. Soon it'll be available on sale on Amazon and the like, but right now it's free. I don't know how long this recording is going to be out there, but we'll see if it's always for free. In the meantime, the reason why that's important is because there are 3 steps. If you listen to this podcast, you got some insights. And the most important thing now is LDS, learn it, do it, share it. And in order to make an impact in the world, you really want to take some time to learn it. Don't believe anything we said. Try it for yourself and notice how many negative thoughts that you have on a regular basis. We're literally in a negademic. And if you watch the media, or if you're doom scrolling, that is going to cause your thinking to become negative, and that's going to then cause your feelings to be negative. And before you know it, that becomes your experience. Pause, wait for a moment, notice what am I thinking? And the fact that I'm actually thinking, and then what am I thinking? And that changes our dialogue, and that changes our emotions, which then changes our actions, which changes our behaviors, which changes our habits, which changes our destiny and our character. And so if you can learn it and experiment on it for yourself and notice what happens when you just start to notice your thinking, and then do it yourself. So take these practices that we've shared, a number of practices today, and then do it. And then once you do it, then you can start to share it with other people as someone who models it in a vulnerable way. You know, part of what Lily, you brought to the table today was vulnerability. I've certainly had lots of situations where I've been struggling and in pain. And the last thing I'll share is that in the end of the evening, sometimes I come in and I'm what's called a laughing victim. I'll tell my wife, I am such a victim. It's so frustrating. Here's what happened, and here's what happened, and all these terrible things. And I can laugh about it because I'm in a low state. And then we bounce, and she's like, is there more? Well, yes, there certainly is. And so we can laugh about it because I don't have anything on it then. And I know that I'm going to bounce back out of it. So then you can start to share it, and share it in a way, not where we beat anybody on the head of it, but by demonstrating it. And when you start to live this way, you're magnetic, and you enroll other people who are like it. People want to be around people who are happy. And so you'll enroll other people in your ideas. You'll enroll other people in your business. People want to work with you. People will want to be around you because it's infectious. And just like there's a negative of this negative thinking, so too, it's viral, that when you are in flow and you are compassionate and understanding and you're not so enrolled, people want to be there because they can see that you can see their light.
Wow. Yes. Thank you, Jon. Thank you, Lily. Jon will link your access points as well in our show notes so people could find out more and grab our book. And thank you so much. This was so enlightening. The rest of us are going to have to now go do our deep dive and into the 3 Ps and find out where we could work with you and get more information. So thank you so much to both of you for being here today. We learned a lot. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tsippi, for being phenomenal. Okay. Thanks, Lily. See you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. Our mission at Turning Point is to help leaders actualize their potential. And we know there are a lot of things in the way of that. The best way to make significant progress is by making a plan. And the first step to making a plan is understanding where we are, what our potential is, what's holding us back, and how we can play to our strengths and compensate for our weaknesses. We've created an awesome assessment that helps you identify all of these things and sets you on the path to living with joy, making more money, and increasing your productivity. We love this assessment and know you will too. Take it at myturningpoint.com/quiz. That's myturningpoint.com/quiz. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.